How's it going? Today we're going to be talking about your ability to adapt. This is going to be another video in the creativity playlist. So, your intelligence is your ability to adapt to change. That's a quote from Stephen Hawking. And to adapt is so powerful in so many ways. Everything about your life, the only real certainty is change. And we go through so many changes as we grow and as we build, as we, go through our lives, that our ability to adapt is very important. And a lot of people have a really hard time with change because it's out of their comfort zone. We're very much creatures of habit, which is why when we get older, it's a lot harder for us to do things that are not familiar to us because we're just so caught in our own habit loops of bullshit. But when I've done a lot of my research on your ability to adapt, the scientists say there's really three key flexibilities. There's the what is it called? Cognitive flexibility, there's emotional flexibility, and then there's decision flexibility, basically. And as much as we know about life and about things, there's always going to be certain situations where we are going to have to adapt and have to change something, have to pivot. Now, it's always important to know where you're going, to know your why, but you also have to figure out things kind of on the fly sometimes. And this is where, your intuition or your gut, or basically just your well of knowledge that you have comes into play. And this is why it's very important to have a good grasp on life and basic fundamentals. Because whenever problems arise, it's pretty easy to do the wrong thing, but if we just were to think about how we're going to react to certain situations, you can really figure anything out and build from there. So the first one again was cognitive flexibility, and that's just being able to adapt the way that you think and the way that you see things, your own personal beliefs. And it's important to be very flexible. It's important to be like water. Whatever situation you get put in, you form to that situation. And then you deal with it and you move on. You got to be like Neo in the Matrix, take control of your life. Don't let your life take control of you. So you have this ability to take a step back from situations and calm down and not get entirely wrapped up. Sometimes, car accidents happen, things that are totally out of our control. But then you can also decide how you're going to be more flexible when you have situations arise that you're not planned for. Have a fire escape, have a plan B, always have, 5% of your mind thinking about out of the box things and situations that could arise for you. And then the next one I think is even more important to think about, which is emotional flexibility. So we have a very interesting problem in our society where everyone is very emotional. And it's not just our society, it's everywhere, but emotions are just chemicals in people being played out through their body and through their existence, And once we learn to not necessarily get wrapped up in other people's emotions, we can maybe also learn how to not get so wrapped up in our own emotions. Because if you have mindfulness and if you are a flexible person, you'll begin to realize that people are just big bags of emotion, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get caught up in their emotional roller coasters. I tend to find that the people that have the least control over their own mind and their own emotions want to control the world around them, and they want other people to be basically just as out of control as they are, or so they try and control things. It's kind of a catch-22. But when you're really trying to run a business or get your life together, really, being able to have emotional flexibility where you don't take things so seriously, you take them from more of a realist point of view, and you see sometimes that the people that you work with have their own emotional unflexibility where they are determined to be in a bad mood or determined to while out, and you don't have to let it necessarily affect you. Now, we all get those, vibes from people, and we are very susceptible to the people that we hang out with. I think everyone understands this. If you think about it, when you were a teenager, whenever, your group of buddies was up to no good, you were up to no good, monkey see, monkey do. But then whenever you were with a bunch of guys that were up to doing good things, you are very much more powerful, and that's a synergy. But it's important to understand how our environment and our people that we're around affect us, and then it's also important to have that emotional flexibility to take a step back and not get caught up in the whirlwind of the day-to-day emotional storm. It's like Twitter. Everybody's just freaking out and they want everyone else to freak out too, when none of it matters. And it's better to have an open mind and mostly just be connected to who you are and where you are at in the current moment. I don't know if that's necessarily the most flexible thing, but that's just the truth of what you need to do. So having emotional flexibility is basically your ability to see and then act in a different way than your emotions. And we make a lot of irrational decisions because of our emotions. We really do. We really think that in the moment, the feeling that we have is the right thing to do, and we convince ourselves because our ego is so connected to our mind and to our emotions that we let ourselves get away with all kinds of bullshit just because we feel in the moment it's the right thing to do. This is why it's important to have goals, and it's important to know your why, and it's important to know what you're doing with your life, because you can take a step back from those emotions and be like, is this the most beneficial thing I could be doing with my time right now? Is this actually important to what I'm trying to get done at the moment? And that's a very way of looking at it, but it's just a practical way to deal with an unpractical life and world. And especially when you're trying to achieve your goals, I don't want to say that everybody else's bullshit doesn't matter, because there's always going to be people you care about, and really the most monk thing to do is to help other people. But when you're trying to achieve your goals, you really have to be focused on your own priorities and your own priorities, your own work, because no one else is going to. So you have to put yourself first, and you have to be emotionally flexible when things go awry, and you have to understand that everything's probably going to be just fine. This is just a period of time where things are different. And then finally, I think it's dissertation flexibility, or it just doesn't sound right, but the gist of it is just decision-making flexibility. And in I keep saying today's society, but nowadays, everybody, fucking people all over the world, we're so biased because of what we've been fed our whole lives. You're either a liberal or a Republican, and you're not gonna fucking make any decisions other than that. Or you're a vegetarian, or you're a meat eater, and you're never gonna fucking think of making any other decision, or you drink Coors Light or Bud Light, and everything else is garbage. It's not how life works. It's not black and white. Life is a big ball of gray mush. There's no black and white in anything. You can be one way, but eventually you're gonna find that you're not right, and you're gonna have to get over it. And to be able to make a decision, not scientifically, but just analytically or thoughtfully, see if it was a good decision, and then see the other side, is huge. You have to be able to change your mind. You can't just be one way in this world anymore and think that you're going to get ahead. Sure, you can niche down and have those niche beliefs, but really the most interesting things that I find is when I actually take a opposing view of my own and I really dive into it and I see their perspective and then I see my perspective, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. And that's what I found so many times. And that's what lawyers try and do, is they try and find, well, they don't, that's not true. If they're a good lawyer, they try and find the truth, or they try and convince you of the other side. But it's very important to not just get caught up in your bullshit of what you think is real, because there's just so much in this life that we don't really know, and it could go either way. And if you really hunt for an answer in one direction, you're going to find it. And then if you really hunt for an answer in another direction, you're also going to find it. So how can you be so sure that you know jack shit about a certain topic? You can become a full-on expert and you can have your point of view, but then with your point of view, it's your point of view, and you're not going to be able to convince other people. So you just have to be able to agree to disagree in a lot of situations. Now, there is a very fine line between doing the right thing and doing the wrong thing. And when there's so many people in this world that are convinced that, this should be this way, you tend to have to go that way, but it's not always the truth, But regardless, there's so many people believe that you can't really convince anybody, and you're going to be the one that's proven wrong. But it's still good to just see their perspective, see your perspective, understand that whatever you truly believe, there's someone else that truly believes in the opposite, and they're right in their own way too. And this is just like a giant fortune cookie. But the point is that whenever you are 100% certain about something, go and research the opposite. Not like, I don't want to say flat world shit, but if you ever do look into that, it's kind of funny just to see the opposite. I know the world's round or whatever. I've flown around it, but but just to see their argument and listen to it, you're like, oh, there's some weird shit that they're talking about. And it just goes for everything, though. You can find any answer that you seek, right? So, but you have to be able to determine your own judgment of what the truth is. But like I said, there's always going to be a left and there's always going to be a right, but really the truth lies in the center. So I think I've gone off subject enough, but your ability to adapt and to be flexible for creativity and for business is very important, because when things go wrong, you have to learn how to pivot, and you can't just fall to pieces because something goes wrong. You have to pivot and pull your shit together and then keep going. And like when you have, I make masterful pieces of art all the time, and then like the fucking nose will fall off or something, and then I gotta adapt and I gotta change a whole bunch of shit, and it's frustrating, but you just have to deal with it. You have to glue it back on, or you gotta rearrange how it looks, and and just start over sometimes. But I guess that's really the whole point of this thing, is you can't fall apart when things go wrong. You just have to pivot, and you have to deal with it, and you have to adapt, and you have to change your point of view on it going a certain direction, and coming back to reality and seeing really where you are and really what you're doing. And it's another thing, like with finances in your business, it's very important to stick to reality and not to what you're thinking is actually working. Like, is there money coming in from this certain project that you're working on, or are you wasting your time? Numbers don't lie, physics doesn't really lie, and those are very important rules of business to really look at the numbers, break them down, see if you're actually going in the right direction. Like, I find that what I want to make and what actually sells are very different, because you have your point of view and your customers have their point of view, and you need to learn to be able to adapt really to what your customers' point of view is to make them the happiest you can and to make your business the most successful. So that's why adaptability is so important. I might go back into this again, but just good to be flexible. It's good to think about things. It's good to challenge your own beliefs. And change is inevitable. Go with the flow. Peace.